The Cincinnati Reds have struggled mightily at home, and it's something that absolutely needs to change if they want to get where they think they can get.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, let's unmute. As we say in my neck of the woods, aloha and welcome to the Locked On Reds podcast. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Stephen Offenbaker. His name is Jeff Carr. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. We are lifelong baseball fans. We love the Reds. We love this sport. We've been podcasting about it for about 14 years combined now. My goodness, how time does fly. On today's show, Jeff and I are going to ask you a very important question. And that question is, do you know what you know about the Cincinnati Reds team? We're going to get to your questions and comments on that coming up a little bit later on this live show here on Monday. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. We're also going to be talking about Nick Martinez. Martinez pitched well on Sunday, but is what he said after the game really the story? That's got us buzzing. We're going to tell you what he said and what we think about it coming up in just a few minutes. But let's begin with how the Reds have fared at home this season. The friendly confines of GABP have not necessarily been that friendly. That's coming up on this episode that's brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, Jeff, let's dive right into this. You got an article out over at SI right now, and it breaks this down fairly well. You took a look at the Cincinnati Reds record basically since Elly De La Cruz was called up, since he made his debut that wonderful night against the Dodgers where you made me do a turnaround from Springfield to come right back to the ballpark to watch that debut. You didn't make me. I couldn't wait to get back down there. But you and I were there. We were there for the start of this time period. And since that day, the Reds haven't really been all that overwhelming at Great American Ballpark.
No, in fact, if you fancy yourself a playoff team, Steve, if you want to advance in the playoffs, it's well known you better play good at home, because when you get those home games, you got to win those home games. And the Reds haven't done that really well in a while, since June 6th of 2023, that fateful day. And I use that as an arbitrary mark just to kind of look back. Elly De La Cruz's clock started ticking back then, i.e. the Reds' clock started ticking back then. But the Reds are 71-78 during that time. And you might say, well, that's not too bad, right? Like, they're not that far underneath 500. There are 21 teams that have a better home record than the Reds do in that time frame. Like, if they want to get where we think they can get, they've got to be better at home. And it's kind of gotten to a point now, Steve. We're not talking about a small sample size. This is 149 games that they are just not quite there.
So this is interesting how the timing of this and your research, it kind of lines up with something we were talking about earlier last week, where I mentioned long homestands make me nervous. And I think you've put in statistical form what it is that my gut check was doing, because, I was telling you the long homestands make me nervous because I felt like they might get too comfortable. Their level of play drops off a little bit. Now that might not necessarily learn to talk, Steve, might not necessarily be what is causing the problem, but obviously there's something going on. So what do you hypothesize that is causing this night and day difference between how this team performs on the road versus what happens when they're back in Cincinnati playing at GABP?
Well, there's three things really. And quite frankly, it's not pitching, hitting, and defense. It's pitching, hitting, and roster construction, because, and I'll put it to you and I'll put it to the chat. Which is the most at fault here? Because according to WRC Plus, which is a very similar statistic to OPS Plus, an all-inclusive number that talks about offensive production, the Reds are 27th in Major League Baseball during this time frame at home. So they don't hit well at home. That's not good. They also don't pitch well at home. They're 25th in team ERA. during this time frame. But Steve, for me, and I'd like to hear your take on this and the chat's take. But for me, it's the roster construction, because for these 149 games, the Reds have played 44 different players. And that's also another random inclusion of Elly De La Cruz in this. Again, not a referendum on him, but 44. But of those 44 players, only 6 of them have played more than 100 games. They have played more players during this time frame at home than the Brewers have or than the Pirates have. So the team that they want to be better than, and the team that we all believe that they're better than, has still had a better roster construction than they have.
Consistency, right? This is the thing that we have badgered this team with for several years now. And I think that lack thereof of consistency and their leading in number of players go hand in hand. It's hard for this team to be consistent because it has no depth, Jeff. Yeah. When they go to this guy, and I think our guy in the chat here, Brad, let's get a comment in here early. Brad says, each year, the Reds' success seems to depend on the health and availability of a particular player. Last year, it was Stevenson. In 2023, it was McLean. This year, it seems to be Hayes. This is a good observation. It leads to the depth conversation because they build these teams, Jeff, and the roster construction, you're right, is a very key point. They build these teams. They have an expectation, but the second it goes sideways, the second you get your first injury, either Friedel dives into a wall in spring training, or McLean wrecks his shoulder, or Stevenson catches a collarbone, or Austin Hayes pulls a hammy. The second that happens, there's nobody else on this depth chart to really step up and fill that void. Now, they got lucky, and I think it was luck a little bit with Tyler Stevenson this year, because while everybody knew Jose Trevino had a little bit in him, nobody expected this. Nobody expected him to go off like he has gone off to start this season. So they got a little lucky there. But by and large, they don't have a next man up. They don't have the ability to fill this roster. You know, you lose an outfielder and you're looking around like wondering, can Jeff Carr still catch a fly ball? I'm not sure, but he's close by. We could call him. Like, that's how this team does injury replacement right now. And that's an aspect that Nick Krall needs to get better. He seems to be okay with putting together a plan for what a team should probably look like, absent that power hitting outfielder, but he doesn't have a plan for when his plan goes sideways. And I think that's where the improvement needs to happen.
And I think that's been my biggest gripe. As much as I'd love to look on the brighter side of Redsdom, I still feel like it's very obvious that this team plans for the best and hopes for the best. And if the best doesn't happen, then we'll figure it out along the way. You know, they always say, hope for the best, plan for the worst. The Reds have never done that. I don't know when they did. They probably did that back in the 70s and the 80s and, 1990, whenever they were good. But they haven't done that in a long time. And it's very evident when you look at this roster, because I mentioned the 6 guys. I told you before we hit record that the 2 leaders in this category are Elly De La Cruz. He's played 146 of the 149 games at home during this time frame. Spencer Steers played 142 of them. Can you guess the other 4? I'll give you a hint. One of them's not on the team anymore. One of them's in AAA. One of them just got off the IL. And one of them will surprise you based on his injury history.
All right. So the one that's in AAA is probably Will Benson.
Yep. 108 games of these 149.
The one that just got off the IL would be Tyler Stevenson.
110 of the 149.
The one that's not on the team anymore since 2023.
And for anyone wondering, I did not write these in the notes. That's why he's not active.
It's not Votto. He was hurt a lot in the 2023 season.
Mm-hmm. And didn't play last year.
Right? I'm drawing a blank on the one that's not here anymore, Jeff.
He's in Kansas City.
Oh, so that'd be Jonathan India. Okay. Mm-hmm. That leaves us one more, right?
The one that will surprise you. The one that is always overlooked. His name rhymes with Smej Peedle.
There's no way TJ Friedel has played
103 of the 149 games. But
Really?
that's it. That's the list. 2 of these guys aren't here. One of these guys is a surprise. The 3 of the other, they make sense. But like
Adrian was on that. I
Adrian's
wasn't on that one.
But it's sad when you look at the fact that they've played so many guys and you only have 6 of them that have played over 100 games, played a large percentage of these 149 games. Like, that is the biggest thing for me. As much as the performances have not been good, it all stems from the roster construction. The fact that the Reds do not put together a good roster plan. As much as we have praised Nick Krall on some of the moves that he has made, and he has made good trades, but by and large, this roster has not been good enough. And hopefully we can see some guys step forward, see some guys improve. I mean, Noelvi Marte looks like he is taking a step forward and improving. I mean, Tyler Stevenson, we're seeing TJ Friedel looking good, but ultimately it's about the team that you put together, and the whole team still has plenty of holes in it.
Yeah, Nick Krall's, I think, best move at creating a depth, reacting to a disaster, having somebody around as a spare part, has been the Santiago Espinal signing. That's really the one guy that
the trade.
He went out and traded for an emergency and then paid the money to Santiago Espinal. Did not listen to Jeff Carr. Listen to me. Paid the money, kept Santiago around, and it's reaping dividends. So that's the one. I'll give him credit for one move in an emergency that helped fill a void.
But if they hope to get to where we all hope that they can be, they've got to be better at home. They've got to get more consistency in the roster and the performance, especially at Great American Ballpark, because that's where you got the advantage. And so far, it's been a disadvantage. But I know this, Steve. Getting back to what happened this weekend, as much as that fed into the fact that they've struggled at home, we did see a good pitching performance from Nick Martinez, but it was what he said after the fact that's got me buzzing, it's got you buzzing, and I'm pretty sure it's got everybody else excited. There is surviving, and then there's thriving, and that's what you can do with your finances when you got Monarch Money, because you see all your finances in one place. If you go to monarchmoney.com and set up an account today, you can put all of your accounts on one screen. That way you don't have to remember multiple logins. You don't have to remember all the different websites and all the different ways to go look at this account or that account. And you can see it all in one place. You can see the growth of your investments. You can see your debit accounts and your credit accounts and everything all on one page. I love using Monarch Money for multiple different reasons, but it's that simplicity, the big picture all in one page. We always talk about the big picture here on Locked On Reds, and the big picture of your finances can be shown to you every single day on Monarch Money. Go to monarchmoney.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save half off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com and the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save 50% off your first year. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money today. Thanks for always making Locked On Reds your first listen, your second listen, and all your listens every single day. And shout out to our everydayers out there. Really appreciate you guys being a part of the show each and every day. And if you're not an everydayer, make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or on your favorite podcast device or app. We're on all of those out there. Make sure you check them out today.
Is there such thing as a
technology
podcast? Is there a podcast device?
I think that's what this is. I don't know.
That's a phone,
anyway,
Jeff.
Anyway, I'll tell you this though, Steve. One of the good things about Sunday's game, at least, I mean, the Reds and rubber matches, that's another statistic for another day that we'll dive into because they're horrible at those as well. But it wasn't because of Nick Martinez. He was good. 6 innings, 1 run allowed. He looked really strong, and really he even talked about post-game his mechanics. He was like, they're so easy, they're so repeatable right now. It just feels like I'm getting up there and I'm doing my thing, and it's easy for me at this moment. And I love seeing that as much as I loved hearing what he had to say about another player on his team. But real quick, Steve, are we feeling better about Nick Martinez just as a whole? Not saying the whole qualifying offer thing, but are we feeling better about Nick Martinez after these last couple of starts?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into a debate. I know people want to have the debate about, well, but $21 million. Is he $21 million good? Look, I don't care. That's what he's getting paid. He's on the roster. That don't matter. That's no. But is he getting good? Is he getting better? Is he performing well? Well, you look at his last 5 starts, right? He had a start against the Giants, the Mariners, Miami, St. Louis, and Washington. And in every one of those starts, he's gotten a little bit better. In the last 3 starts, he's gone 5 2/3 and then 6 and then 6 as far as innings pitched. Earned run wise, he gave up 2 earned runs in Miami, an earned run against St. Louis, and an earned run against the Nationals. He's pitching really, really well. I said I needed him to pitch like a 3rd or 4th starter, and I would be just happy. That's a 3rd starter type of numbers. 6 innings of 1-run baseball. Each time you go out, take that every day. So for me, he's pitching the way he needs to pitch. He's pitching to my expectations, at least. I would have to think he's delivering what the Reds wanted him to deliver. So I don't have a lot of gripes about how he's pitching right now. Would I like to see him go get that 7th inning, get that little extra? I would, but I also most of the time have enough faith in this bullpen that 6 innings worth of work, I think they can cover the remaining 3. So I am okay with how he's pitching, Jeff.
And ultimately, it wasn't a perfect day for the bullpen. I mean, the bullpen did end up giving up the eventual runs that decided the game, but I put more of the blame on the lineup for Sunday's result than I do anything else. But no, I've been happy with Nick Martinez, and we've made our point about the qualifying offer. I think that stands, and it's just going to be what it is. Just make sure that you are a very good pitcher every 5th day out. And as it stands right now, whenever Rhett Lauder is ready to go, I don't know what the decision is on that one, because it looks like Nick Martinez is making that decision pretty difficult. I don't know that you need to make a change right now.
There's a couple things that make me nervous about that, right? But, I hear Dusty Baker somewhere back here going, these things work themselves out. And I'm like, no, what needs to work out is Rhett can just keep pitching at AAA and everything's going to be okay. I don't know that there's a move. I don't know that his health, I think this is what you were alluding to. I don't know that Rhett Lauder's health right now dictates a change in the starting rotation. I don't know that anybody has performed poorly enough that you're like, that's it, we're going to the rookie. I think Rhett Lauder is a very, very nice insurance policy at that point to have just kind of cooking over there on the side. And if you need to skip somebody a turn, if you need to start thinking about keeping arms ready to go for September, October, you've got that Rhett Lauder piece to insert in. I think that's the highest value that Rhett Lauder brings to this team in 2025 as that insurance policy that you can plug and play with, and he should be ready to go.
It's a great luxury to have, but also a great luxury to have is a well-hitting catcher, although he played DH in this game. But he was the only guy that you really couldn't put a lot of fault on because he hit the 1 home run that gave the Reds their 1 run. But Tyler Stevenson looked pretty good again at the plate. Nick Martinez was asked about his performance, and I will accentuate the very last thing that Nick Martinez has to throw in here on this clip.
Yeah, he looks great. Yeah, he a veteran presence, really. Really smart hitter and obviously knows how to command the staff and communicate again and yeah, he's really coming to his own, and should definitely extend him.
He was not prompted for that. Nobody asked him about Tyler Stevenson's contract, and yet Nick Martinez said
should definitely extend him.
Oh yeah, baby.
Let's
go.
That seems to me like the players have been talking about this.
Right?
To your point, he was not prompted. Yeah, he was not prompted. He was not asked. He threw that in there on his own. And I hope the Reds are paying attention. There's nothing about the Jose Trevino extension that precludes the Reds from going and signing Tyler Stevenson. You and I identified Tyler Stevenson as the guy that should be the target last offseason. Elly De La Cruz notwithstanding. Tyler Stevenson was the next natural guy in line. Matt McClain, coming off the injury, wasn't necessarily the dude you were going to target unless you got a deal. I like that they're talking about this. And you can't tell me if Nick Krall was in his office, writing a few notes, signing a couple letters to whatever, and he hears that. You can't tell me he wasn't like, excuse me, what now? I think that was definitely an attention getter, and maybe just maybe a teeny tiny little shot across the bow of the front office to like, let's get some things done. Tyler deserves to be here. Tyler deserves to get paid, and we want to keep Tyler around.
Yeah, we should definitely extend him.
I mean, he hasn't hit a single yet this year. He has all extra base hits. Now, granted, he's only played in 3 games. I get that. We're not going to go too crazy about that. But I kind of love that statistic, right? He's got 2 doubles and a homer, and he has as many hits as he has strikeouts. He also has 2 walks. Everything looks beautiful to get him going.
I want to do this right now before I lose it later for the chat. Carlton, Tyler did not lose his job to Jose Trevino. And I want to be clear about this. 2 reasons that Tyler Stevenson is playing DH some right now. 1, he's coming off an oblique injury that they are trying to baby and protect. And Tyler's bat is much more important to this lineup right now than his catching skills are. Number 2, Jose Trevino is playing way over his head. Yeah. And he is a very good defensive catcher. You have to, I see what you're saying, Carlton. Sorry, I missed that part. Carlton was dealing with something higher in the chat, but I just want for the fans out there that think Tyler lost his job. He didn't lose his job. Jose Trevino is the hot hand. You stay with the hot hand. We talked about this last week. Stay with it until it changes. And then if Jose Trevino goes back to baseline Jose Trevino, Tyler Stevenson is starting the next day. So that's how you got to go. You got to play the hot hand, and I love that Tito's doing it.
Well, and I saw some posts, and whether they were sarcastic or not, even sarcasm has a twinge of truth to it, or at least a twinge of a feeling of truth to it. There were some people that were saying, hey, look at this. Tyler Stevenson catches on Saturday, and the pitching staff blows up. Those 2 things are not correlated. Like, that's not like because Tyler Stevenson caught, the pitching staff then stopped pitching well. Like, I don't see that at all. They pitched fine with him over his career. So I don't see this as, all right, Trevino's catcher number 1, and Stevenson is, let's put him in the lineup any way we can, a la, let's put him at first base, let's put him in the left field, all those things that David Bell tried. That's not what they're going to do. It's going to be catcher or DH, and Tyler Stevenson is still the catcher number 1.
Tyler in left field. We should have that clip when we talk to him about that.
Go find it. Yeah,
his,
I know.
His facial expression when I started talking about left field was classic, but
we zapped him out of whatever zone he was in during that interview. We're like, hey, left field. He's like, no,
never, ever,
no,
never again. No. For me, Jeff, I circling back to how we got onto this with Nick Martinez saying extend Tyler Stevenson. I would extend him right now. If they could agree to a number today, I would say sign that deal. I am not concerned about his injury history. I'm not concerned about anything that's happened along the way to make me say I don't want him around if the Reds can get a deal done. I like the impact that he has on the lineup. I like the impact that he has on the team as a whole around him. Describing him as a veteran presence. It seems like just yesterday he was making that day his debut in the COVID season, right? It feels you believe it's
5 years ago.
5 years ago, right? So for me, Tyler is that veteran presence. Like, I agree, extend him. And if we want to talk defensive catchers, does Tyler Stevenson starting at catcher doesn't make the pitching staff worse. There are little things I think that Jose Trevino does better than Tyler Stevenson defensively, and that's fine. But it's not a drop off in a way that I would be like, well, Jose Trevino's defense really is the difference maker. It's the separator that makes you want to have Jose Trevino, your starting catcher. It's not that much of a drop off defensively.
And I think the point that we're trying to make, we've been dancing around this for a little bit, but I've seen this point and I want to address it. Ben Campbell said the right thing. 30 more home runs to go, 39 more home runs to go. But the point that we're trying to say here is, and I've seen this and I want to poignantly address it, just because Jose Trevino is really good so far this year does not mean that Tyler Stevenson is tradable. You keep them both on the roster. Your roster, the baseline of your roster is much better with both of them here.
Has anybody been talking about trading Tyson?
I've seen that. It's really there's times I get off of Reds Twitter because sometimes it gets a little toxic, and that's been the toxic. If it's not about Matt McClain, that's the thing that they're talking about.
Let's find out if these folks in the chat today watching us here on YouTube, Jeff, know what they know. Because coming up, we're going to ask the question, do you know what you know about this Cincinnati Reds team to be true? We're discussing that coming up next. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. You can use them to find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who can deliver incredible results. They're also very, very cost-effective for growth. Instead of hiring full-time people, Upwork helps you find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale to your business needs, and you can do it very, very efficiently. Visit upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's upwork.com to connect to the top talent and grow your business today. If you can't watch us here on YouTube, you can get us in every single audio feed out there for your podcast. Every app, we're pretty much on it. If you find one we're not on and you need us to be, reach out to Jeff on the socials. He can probably make it happen for you. All right, Jeff, it's time to find out if these folks that have been watching today in the chat here know what they know about this team. If you had a question earlier, get in there with it again, because I don't want to miss it if I have to scroll back. I want to grab this one from Rod to start with, Jeff. If they play well enough on the road, then their home record isn't quite as important. It seems that this team is so injury plagued every year that it kills any momentum. And I want to talk about that last part for just a second. And we've threatened to do a deep dive on this. And I mostly just want to talk about it for a second to maybe plant the seed that we actually do a segment on this maybe in the next couple days. Are the Reds unfairly plagued with injuries? Are they more injured than anybody else in baseball, or do we just pay attention to it more because we live and die by this team every day?
Well, I think you've got to qualify it, because I think quantity of injuries, I'd probably say they're in the middle of the pack. But going back to the roster construction conversation, like it's the guys who get hurt relative to the guys that they need to perform. It's usually the more important players that they're missing. So that will kind of be the difference, right? Like, it's not just how many players are on the IL, because I see that. That's a pretty basic talking point with most sports. I mean, NFL does this, NBA does this. So like, look at all the guys on the IL, and it's like, you know, role players, stuff like that. It's who is on the IL is what the Reds have really been missing these last couple of years. But that just harkens back to the whole roster construction thing. And it's like, how do the Reds plan for this? Because it always just feels like the plan is, if a McLean or a Stevenson or an Austin Hayes hits the IL, they're sitting up there in the front office going, well, when they get back, we'll know who this team is. But until then, well, we're just watching baseball, I guess.
This from Lucy's Lair here. Yeah, I did that on purpose. Just for them to stay above 500 for a long spell, like the rest of the season. That's what they want there in the layer, and that's what we want. But I bring that up, Jeff, because you and I were talking about this, I think, off air before a show. I don't know if it made it into the show that day, but there's a very, very rough patch of schedule that the Reds are undertaking starting today with the Atlanta Braves. And you and I were talking about what our reasonable expectations are, what we want to see. And, you know, obviously we want the Reds to go out and win every series, but the reasonable expectation for basically from now, and guys, I know it's May, this is going to blow your mind, but from now to the All-Star break is 500 or just a skosh better than 500. Because if they can reach the final 7 games before the All-Star break, that is a gauntlet. And I think Jeff's pulling it up right now to tell you what it's going to be. But that's a gauntlet that they didn't finish with 7 games against the Marlins and I think the White Sox, somebody that they should push over. So
Marlins
in those 7
yeah.
Marlins and Rockies. So in those final 7 games before the All-Star break, if they can win 5 of 7, be 500 in this gauntlet, head into the All-Star break 4, 5, 6 games over 500. This team is primed and poised and ready to go. And I'm okay with that. There's going to be there's going to be some losing between now and then because of this gauntlet. So, Jeff, you got it ready? Because we should tell the people what this nightmare of a stretch kind of looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I'll start it with this because obviously 4 in Atlanta and everybody's going, well, Atlanta's under 500. But yeah, if you believe that that's going to be how they end the season, then I got some oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. I think they're gonna bounce back fine, but they are under 500 right now. But that's 4 in Atlanta, 3 in Houston. That's the next week. Then they come back home. They face the White Sox. They really need to sweep that series with this stretch going on because then they've got 3 against Cleveland, 3 against Pittsburgh, which say what you will about Pittsburgh this season and the fact that the Reds have already swept them. They always have problems with Pittsburgh. They always have problems with Pittsburgh. Then you got 3. You got this next stretch, this stretch of 9 games after Pittsburgh, 3 at home against the Cubs, 3 on the road against the Royals, 3 on the road against the Cubs. And then actually, let's make it 12 because then they're 3 at home against Milwaukee. I mean, that's a super important stretch for the division. The Reds could find themselves buried in the division with that 12-game stretch that stretches from the end of May through the first 3-4 days in June. That's such an important stretch. And then, oh, by the way, then they face the Diamondbacks for 3 more. They go up to Cleveland for 3, up to Detroit for 3, at home against Minnesota for 3. Then they take a breath. They play St. Louis for 3. Then they go to New York and face the Yankees. Then they come home and face the Yankees. They come home and face the Padres, in Boston against the Red Sox, in Philly against the Phillies. And if they survive all of those games, then they have that 7-game stretch against the Marlins and the Rockies at home before the All-Star break. But Steve, this next month and a half, this next 6 weeks of ball games, I think it's probably going to tell us whether or not the Reds make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. They have to be near. And look, if they finish 1 or 2 games under 500 during that stretch, and I'm not counting those last 7 games, but if they finish 1 or 2 games under 500 in that gauntlet stretch and head into that 7-game,
we're feeling good.
We're feeling really good because they can still head into the All-Star break above 500 and ready to compete. So, you know, the next bit of baseball, guys, is going to tell us a lot about how this team is going to be able to perform over the course of the year.
Which is where I wanted to go with this. Our very first comment, actually, before we even went live, Pierre said this. He said, time for everybody to take a deep breath, wait, and exhale. Just remember where this team was May 5th of last year. And you're correct, Pierre. I mean, last year, the month of May in general was very unkind to the Reds. So we got to kind of watch and see exactly how they react to this May. But they also dealt with a lot of bad injuries at the worst times last year. And hopefully we see Austin Hayes here back this week. But ultimately, it's just going to be so tough. That's why I'm still a little bit like 6-1, half dozen the other as to what I know. And that's why I wanted to ask everybody, what do you know that you know about this team? Because I still don't know that I know who they can become. I've seen their issues. I've seen the baseline. They can certainly disappoint this season. And I hope that they can be better. But what I know about this team is that I'm still waiting for a verdict on a lot of different things. And that includes Elly De La Cruz. I mean, Elly De La Cruz has played pretty well so far this season, but we need him to be better than pretty good. We need him to be great.
I did see some questions about Elly earlier in the chat, and I wanted to go look because has Elly been bad? Has Elly not lived up to whatever? And you look at his numbers, Chef. I mean, he's already 1.1 in WAR on the season. He's 269, 353, 418. He leads the team in home runs right now. He's stolen 13 bases. He's kind of doing.
He'll take those rate
things.
stats for sure.
I think he's looked better at the plate this year, at least at times, than he did last year. He's playing 11% better than league average as far as OPS plus goes early in the season now. Do I want to see more upswing? Do I want to see him take off? Absolutely. But I'm also, I don't know if disappointed is a word I would use. No. I don't know if, I think Elly's just fine.
I think that he's a guy that we should expect to talk more about, and we haven't talked a lot about him this year. And maybe that's a good thing, because you can talk a lot about, you know, the struggles and stuff. And we've talked about the struggles, but there hasn't been that day where we get on here and we're just like, Elly De La Cruz. We haven't had episodes like that. And I think for me, that's why I'm kind of sitting here like, yeah, he's fine, but we need him to be better than fine. And I'm not saying I'm disappointed. I'm just saying I need more. Like, he's got to be that guy for this Reds team to get where they need to be, because Elly just being fine means that somebody else has to step up. And right now, nobody else has really stepped up. Like Austin Hayes was for a little bit, but he hadn't played enough to be like, that's our guy. Like, there's no guy that you turn to right now and just says, that's the guy that's going to break everything out, because he almost did. I mean, Elly had that loud, awesome, exciting foul ball that looked like a home run. And Tommy Thrall, if you were listening to the radio broadcast like I was, and I was working out in the garage, was like, "That's good!" Oh, wait. Nope. Actually, I think that's foul. And it's like, Tommy, no, don't do that to me. You're killing me, man. Because for 2 seconds there, I think my whole neighborhood like heard the echoing from my garage.
You know, talking about Elly's performance, and I'll give you, like, he's leading the team right now in wins above replacement, right? He is the, as far as position players go, he's at 1.1 in WAR. Now, don't look. Who are the next two for the Reds in wins above replacement? Position players.
Position players. The next two, Trevino is one of them.
Okay. What's your next guess?
Espinal?
Okay. This is gonna blow your mind, and this should tell you everything you need to know about how the Reds lineup has performed. Number two is Austin Hayes with 1. He is just 0.1 behind Elly.
He's played like half the games.
And number 3, position player wise, buckle up, Noelvi Marte at 0.7. So that should tell you.
That's why he's hitting cleanup right now.
The supporting cast has been playing. That Austin Hayes, who started the season late and is out again, is number 2 in WAR.
Before we jump back into the questions in the comments, a question for you and a question for the comments. Is he the cleanup hitter the rest of the year?
Austin Hayes?
No, Noelvi Marte.
Noelvi Marte.
He's been hitting cleanup here recently.
He keeps playing. If he keeps playing like he's been playing, I think 4 and 5 are interchangeable, and 4 and 5 when Austin Hayes is back is Noelvi and Austin. However you want to do those two, that's what I'm doing with them.
I'd see that because Steers broke out for me, but there's an argument maybe if McLean, like, I don't think McLean is as detrimental as people are talking about right now, and we've talked a lot about him. We think he's going to break out soon, but I almost wonder if you don't move him down in the lineup just for a few days to see if things kind of get figured out, and you move Spencer Steer into that second spot. And maybe you have McLean hitting 7th, because you can't take his glove off the field. He's one of the best fielders on this team.
Yeah, and you know, Matt McLean's slump is still getting how many? 4 of the last 5 games.
4 of the last 5, 5 of the last
4 of the last 5 games. He's getting hits, and that's a slump.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know he's been bad, but I think he's showing signs of breaking out of it. Leave Matty alone right now. It's May.
Okay.
Leave Matty alone. An interesting point that Lucy made there. Gavin Lux, do you bat him clean up against right-handed pitching?
Right-handed, yes. He looked rough against Mackenzie Gore yesterday.
Against the right-handed pitching, I think he can slot in. This lineup, I think, has the ability to be a little bit more fluid than we've seen in years past, where, that guy bats where that guy bats. But I think 1 through 3 for sure, can be pretty fixed. And then after that, you can tinker a little bit more. But I lead off TJ Friedel, assuming health, bat Matt McLean second, Elly bats third, and then you have a couple options starting at 4, 5, 6. So I don't think Tito needs to be locked in, but I think the players available to him in that 4, 5, 6 range, you're going to see Lux, you're going to see Hayes, you're going to see Marte, and you really probably shouldn't see anybody else other than those 3. Then you get 7, 8, 9, and you start to see good spots. Spencer Steer at 7 is great. he is going to hit, guys. He is going to hit. It's gonna happen. Him at the 7th spot is great. I like it there. Now you get to Trevino or Stevenson, or we didn't even talk about Stevenson. You can put him in the 4, 5, 6 range too. You know, if your 4, 5, 6 is Hayes, Marte, Stevenson, that's pretty good. Yeah.
That's
7,
the
8,
whole
9 really doesn't matter at that point. So
because remember, you did the thing during the offseason when we were talking about lineups, and everydayers may remember this, where you did the thing like they could do 2 waves where they have 1 wave and 2 waves. And it feels like they have the right guys to do that. Like maybe 4th you put Hayes, and then 5th you put Marte, because he's got the speed that if he gets on, he can act like a leadoff guy. He can run. And then you have
off hitter 1B, right? Like, so that's the reset, and that's your new number 1 guys: Marte, Stevenson, Trevino, random
Marte,
outfielder.
Stevenson, Steer, Trevino,
and then random outfielder that should.
And then Espinal or whoever. Yeah,
right.
You know,
random.
If they bring up Reese Hines and replace Blake Dunn with them, I mean, yeah, like that's a whole other thing. I don't know if anybody's asked about Adam Dunn. Like
Adam Dunn. Nobody's asked about Adam Dunn except maybe the local beer
don't know
vendor.
why. You should talk about Adam Dunn every day.
The local beer vendor wants to know when Adam Dunn's coming to town next, because they got to stock up. That's really just, you got to prepare for Captain
Busch Light Apples back on the menu, man. I know that.
This is the way to go. Listen, I want to get to this from Adrian. He's asked it a couple times. I've seen it go by, and I do want to talk about it because that whole stretch of schedule we just described really impacts this. And that is from Adrian. What is the one position on the field the Reds need to upgrade? Is it right field? Adrian asks. Who would each of you guys target if you were Nick Krall? So this is a multi-tiered thing that I have to say. How they perform in that stretch that Jeff and I just described to you determines whether or not they actively begin to start looking for a trade deadline mid-season upgrade. If they're at 500, if they're within the margin of wild card or competing for the division, and they survive that gauntlet, they will begin to start looking for a deal, and they will be looking for a deal for that power hitting outfield bat, damn it, that we have been asking for 3 years now. That's the upgrade. That's the move they've got to make. And this stretch of schedule between now and say July determines whether or not Nick Krall goes and does something, because he's going to have to spend some prospect capital. And guys, it's going to cost a pitcher, and it's going to cost a pitcher you don't like them giving up. That's what's going to happen. They're going to trade a pitcher from the minor leagues to get a right-handed. I don't know, a power hitting outfield bat. That's what it's going to take.
I want it to be that. I still feel like they probably won't, because as much as we've asked for it, they continue to be like, nah, we'll go do something else. But I definitely think that for this question specifically, my answer is right field. I don't know that changes during this time period, because Jake Fraley had like that week where he was really hot, and then he's gone back to being what he was early on this season. He hits a home run every now and then, and he gets a hit every now and then, but we're just not seeing the Jake Fraley that we saw a couple of years ago. And it feels like he is stretching for more power, but that's made him an even less effective overall hitter. So I kind of wonder a little bit if he's got that in his game now. Can he take that next step? And if it's not him, I don't know that they trust Will Benson enough, or else he'd be up here by now. And Reese Hines is starting to look better in AAA, but you're not going to put him in there every day. I don't know that they've got the guy in organization. So I think that ultimately we're going to get through this stretch, and hopefully we do get through this stretch, like we've said, still afloat, and they need to get a good right fielder.
Would it shock you to learn that amongst position players, Jake Fraley is 6th on the team in WAR, and that he is currently just 4% below league average in play amongst outfielders? He currently has an OPS plus of 96. He has looked way worse than that, is what I'm saying. He is eye tested way worse than that, but statistically he's 4% below league average and is number 6 in the team in WAR. Maybe we're being a little hard on Jake Fraley there, Jeff.
Maybe. I don't know though. I know he can't.
I'm not saying I'm upgrading. I'm not saying don't go get the outfielder. I'm saying
Right,
go
right,
get
right.
the outfielder, but I'm saying that Jake Fraley's performance is not the reason to go get the outfielder. The reason to go get the outfielder is because they've needed the stinking outfielder for 3 years. That's been the glaring hole. That's been the problem that they haven't addressed. And they tried with Austin Hayes, but it still didn't really address the problem.
The check engine light's been on for a while.
Yes.
Now there's like a little bit of a weird smell, and it's got a loud like clicking noise to it. Like, let's just go and fix it already.
Do you have like a little flip card thing on your desk that you go through for these things? Like, I'm going to use, nope, not Star Wars. That was yesterday. No, can't use, no. Oh, I know. Check engine light.
Look, it's not Alderaan, but it still feels like it's a little bit of a catastrophe that's happening in the outfield. So we got to figure this out. No, I was sitting on the Alderaan thing. I was trying to wait and see where I could put that in.
This from Todd.
Yeah.
Todd says, does Nick crawl on a short
No,
leash? Jeff is on a short leash, you guys. I'm going to mute him if he keeps it up with the Star Wars stuff. But Nick Crawl's not on a short leash. Nick Crawl's job is secure right now. And not because what he's doing, he's fine because he's doing what the owners are telling him to do. He's fine because the owners are not measuring success on wins and losses. He's fine because the owners are saying spend this much money and have a team that at least for conversational purposes can compete. And that's what Nick Crawl did.
There was, and this was a couple of years ago, but there was a quick couple of quotes from Nick Castellanos whenever he got to Philadelphia. And he had mentioned that, you know, he's happy to be a part of an organization that really cares about winning. And I think that is telling. And it's not just because he was mad about negotiations or anything. He got a good deal from Philadelphia. It's because when you hear about different organizations, when you hear about different teams, there are different expectations based on ownership. And as much as we have expectations, those expectations are not the same as ownership. And it's been clear for years. And as far as Nick Crawl's performance goes, he is doing exactly what is expected of him based on his bosses. And as long as his bosses are happy with him meeting their expectations, that's not going to change.
You know, Jeff, I thought Scott Campbell was my friend. I thought that Scott Campbell and I, you know, we've spent some time talking together and been at Reds Fest and you know, I met
Are
Scott.
you mad about about his Thunderbolts take that you don't like?
Scott, no, I'm not. I'm mad about this, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. You read it and deal with it.
The Orioles might blow it up like Alderaan. I don't think so. They're still within their window. They have so many different guys.
Because we like a couple of those guys in Baltimore. You and I both like a couple of those guys but I don't think
most of those guys are still under team control. They don't even have like contract extension negotiation problems right now. They have team control. Like they're not going to blow it up. It'd be great if they did because they have a lot of players they could trade. But they're under new ownership, and I think this offseason we see that ownership team spend a lot. I'm expecting Baltimore to go pretty aggressively toward winning next year. I definitely don't see them tearing it down again.
I haven't vetted this number. Maybe you can while I'm starting off here, but Edward's asking about the runs they're giving up at home per lot. You know, what's the average that the opponents are scoring at Great American Ballpark against the Reds? And I'm going to break this down while you look that up. What's the home average of runs allowed? You know, Edward's asking, is Jake Fraley's replacement going to make up for giving up 2.7 runs per home loss? And I think the point here is that he thinks the pitching staff is giving up too many runs. But I distinctly remember Jeff and I talking about looking at the roster as it's constructed, assuming most of the guys are healthy, that if the Reds kept runs allowed to 3 or less, this team should be in competition each and every series. So if they're allowing 3 runs or less at home right now, I don't think that's a dig. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's this pitching staff keeping the Reds in each game. This offense is quite capable of putting up 4 or 5 runs a game if more than 3 people aren't hurt, I guess is what I'm saying. So
is that so I don't know where the 2.7 is coming from. Their home ERA is 3.51, but still that's great. Like I said, as long as they score 4.5 runs a game, they're going to be
right. That's where we kind of did the whole over under joke at 4.5, right? Like if they're 4.5, Reds can win ball games.
I stand by that. Was that just the 77? doing a little math.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure about that 2.7 number, but I'll take 2.7 at home. If that's all you're allowing, the Reds should win more games than they lose if they're allowing.
Pitching's not the problem. That's
not the problem.
Like, I mean, they should probably look
consistency.
at maybe a relief pitcher or something like that at the deadline, but literally every contender is going to do that. The Dodgers are going to do that. So that's not, I mean, to say that you need to look for a relief pitcher at the deadline is like saying, you know what, if you're wet, you might want to dry off with a towel. Like, it's just obvious. You're just going to do it. Like, but I don't think pitching is the problem here.
Outside of Alexis Diaz, your guy, you the president of that particular fan club, but outside of Alexis Diaz,
I've
yeah,
absconded from that one.
I heard you. I watched that show. The Reds bullpen's not been bad either. And there was some chat earlier. I'm not going to try and go all the way back and find it, but basically someone was calling Taylor Rogers a bust. And in 14 games, he has a 1.59 ERA, 11 and 1/3 innings pitched. He struck out 6.4. He has a bit of a high walk per 9 at 4.0. He's not been a bust, but he's a great B group. We talked about this, A group, B group. He's a great B group. Looking at the rest of the gang, Barlow has been a great B group at a 3.21 ERA and 14 innings pitched. Brent Suter has been a great B group at 2.3 ERA in 15 and 2/3 innings pitched. I'm okay, really, with how this bullpen has performed. They're not going to be perfect throughout the course of the year, but just looking up and down at what they've done thus far, Graham Ashcraft is clearly on the scene now as a reliever, 2.2 ERA, 13 games pitched. Emilio Pagan, 2.35 ERA in 15 and 1/3 inning pitched with 8 saves. He is your closer now, gang. Tony Santillan, 1.69 ERA in 16 games pitched. This bullpen pitching is not the problem. And I don't know that we get to All-Star break or trade deadline upgrades, Jeff. I don't think we get to. I think we get one. And I'm banging the table outfield. I'll roll with the pitchers we got.
I tend to
give me a hitter.
I tend to believe you can trade a project prospect for a relief pitcher who's on like an expiring deal or something like that. So they could make that happen. They don't have to really stretch for that. But no, I think from this specific comment, like, I will say congrats to the person who is doing this evaluation on Taylor Rogers, because they're looking specifically at strikeouts to walks. The strikeout to walk ratio is not good. Like, that needs to be better. But everything else has said that he's been okay. And I think the quality of contact could be a little bit better. We've just not seen, I think based on the expectation that I set in the offseason, Taylor Rogers has not met that expectation. But he's not been bad either. But yeah, on the whole, this bullpen has been fantastic. I mean, Emilio Pagan, we didn't talk about him that much this offseason as a guy that could do this, but what he is doing is fantastic. I mean, you mentioned the 2.3 ERA. He's allowing a half a base runner per inning, the whip of 0.52, a half a base runner per inning, and he has a strikeout to walk ratio. He has 5.6 strikeouts per walk. That's a fantastic number. Like, what he is doing right now, I don't want to say that 2.3 ERA is sustainable for the whole season, but it feels kind of sustainable.
It does. And by the way, he also leads the league in games finished.
Yeah, you like to see that. But 8 saves so far this year. Like, I don't love the save statistic. We've talked a lot about that, but he's going to make my prediction of no Reds pitcher will have 20 or more saves. Like, I kind of feel like he's going to be the closer all year long. I don't think he's going to lose this. Lord willing, he stays healthy.
Correct. Is health assumed, he's your guy, with Graham Ashcraft being your and Tony Santillan being your 2 setup guys.
Yeah. But no, I've been very happy with this pitching staff so far. I don't think that that's a problem at all.
All right, let's see what else we got here, gang. This feeding off the Elly De La Cruz conversation we were having earlier. Jonathan says Elly De La Cruz will be top 3 MVP voting, and Hunter Green will also be top 3 in Cy Young. There were
where Hunter
years,
Green is right now.
There were years where when you would make statements like that about a Reds offensive player and a pitcher, people would just laugh at you. But both of those statements are 100% accurate. Elly De La Cruz is going to be in the top 3. He's going to do his things. The real question here is, is Shohei Ohtani going to pitch this year enough that it makes it unobtainable to get the MVP, right? If not, Elly could compete for that. Cy Young wise, Hunter is going to be in the mix for that. Top 3, top 2 is not out of the question. Winning the thing is a possibility. So I love what Hunter Green is profiling for this year.
According to our friends at FanDuel, Paul Skeens and Yamamoto over in Los Angeles are both tied as the favorites for the NL Cy Young right now, both at plus 270. Hunter Green behind them at plus 430. The next closest guy is Zach Wheeler at 15-1. So it's right now it's a big 3 for the NL Cy Young, and Hunter Green's one of those 3.
Yeah, he's been amazing.
It's still super early to get that.
It is, but already 4-2 with a 2.53 ERA and 7 starts. His strikeout per 9 is 11.6. His walk per 9, it's sexy, 1.7.
That's been
Hunter Green is doing
good.
things.
He learned from Nick Martinez and from Brent Suter and from those guys that were just super good at limiting the walks last year. And I'm really happy to see it, because that's the one thing. Like, you look at his game, it's really only missing one thing. Like, everything else looks really, really good. It's just he still keeps the ball in the air a little bit too much. But honestly, we're starting to get to the point where you're really splitting hairs when you're trying to find a weakness in his game. And I'm so happy to say that.
Jonathan is asking the kind of questions that Jeff Carr loves. Let's do one of these. From Jonathan again, how many All-Stars are the Reds going to have this year? What's the over-under? He's setting it at 2.5. I take the over at 2.5. All-Stars representing the Cincinnati Reds in 2025. Elly and Hunter are shoe-ins, 100% shoe-ins. If you had to pick the All-Star team today, Jose Trevino would be selected to be an All-Star right now.
And then
you're already at 3, and Emilio Pagan is making a case to be in the bullpen for the National League. So now you're at 4.
I think they get 3 for sure. The thing will be how long does Trevino keep up this hitting? Because hitting's what gets you into the All-Star game. Like, defense has never really been a thing that gets you into the All-Star game, so he's got to keep hitting. He's got to keep on hitting. I think it's 3. I think that because Trevino plays at a position that you have to vote for, and I said selected. I said he could be picked for the All-Star team. We're not talking about winning the vote. We're just talking about being on the team. There's a chance. The issue is going to be, though, I think he's got to be a write-in, doesn't he? Because Stevenson's going to be the guy that's on the ballot.
No, I'm talking about the manager selecting the bench. Only the starters get voted in, and that's going to all be Dodgers. So let's just know that going in.
Because Mookie's on there as a shortstop.
Yeah, I'm for sure 3 for sure. Outside shot at 4, depending on what the rest of the season between now and voting looks like. But the over under at 2.5, I'm taking the over.
It's nice to say that too. But yeah, I think that it's Pagan, Elly, and Hunter Green right now. It'd be nice to see if Hunter could maybe even angle to be the starter. I still think Paul Skeens probably starts just because of the popularity and all that stuff. And he's really good too.
I don't know. If Hunter keeps pitching like he's been pitching, I think that Hunter Green should be in that conversation for sure.
Paul Skeens probably going to be the only Pirates all-star player, because Pirates aren't looking very good this year. But yeah, I think 3 is a shoe-in. I don't know that anybody else, if Tyler Stevenson can just keep on hitting crazy the rest of this first half, there's a chance he might make it in 2, but he only just started. So I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to have enough games under his belt. Yeah, I think it's 3. Because I just don't feel like we get that lucky with Trevino. I think we got to get lucky. And the Reds don't ever get lucky with that sort of thing.
But we're both taking the over on 2.5.
Yes.
So that's really the
take the over. I haven't said that in a while.
Did that feel good? You've been sitting on that for a while. Do you feel good?
I am one with the force, and the force is yep. All right.
All right, let's get a few more in here, Jeff, before we get out of here. Trying to find a couple ones to deal with. I don't know, Jeff. Where do you want to go here? Are you looking at these two?
Well, I was just thinking while you're looking, which Star Wars movie / show did you watch yesterday? So I watched Solo, Rogue One, and A New Hope.
Oh my God. I watched Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Here we go. Could it be a power hitting first baseman or full-time DH that they target at the deadline versus an outfielder? I don't think so. Wait, what? You can move steer. I don't think that. Listen, stop giving Nick Krall ideas. He needs to go get an outfielder already. I want to stop talking about this.
Well, and this guy does not fit the like just overwhelming superstar. Like you make this trade and immediately the Reds are the favorites in the NL Central. But I could see the Reds getting Jesus Sanchez from the Marlins at the deadline. That would be a power hitting right fielder. He's just not very consistent and he strikes out a lot. So there's that. I just don't know, like thinking of the teams that are going to be bona fide sellers, I don't know who the Reds would necessarily target that's a power hitting first baseman type. Because like Andrew Vaughn's horrible. The Whites, you're not going to trade for him.
I want to point out that Scott Campbell's trying to make up with me and says Star Trek 2 is great. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that.
Star Trek 2 was First Contact, right? Just kidding. Next Generation, number 2.
You're a dork. Francona is the Reds MVP. This from Northman. I don't know about that, but it sure has been refreshing for the most part, the way this team's being run right now from a day-to-day basis on the field. We probably were guilty, just like everybody else, of overhyping Francona just a skosh, but I don't miss David Bell.
No,
I don't miss the press conferences sounding like this, where we can talk about what the players are. They're almost there, Jeff. Did you know that they're almost there? They're playing really, really well.
They're competing and they're,
haven't got to do that. I do miss getting to do that.
No, I've been happy with Terry Francona so far this season. I think it's interesting because, and one of the reasons that I wanted to sort of lead off the live interaction with the comments section by, talking about, do you know what you know about this team, is the reason, David Bell didn't know how to manage a pitching staff. I feel like Terry Francona does a pretty good job of that. But I think that one of the reasons that I wanted to ask, do you know what you know, is that whenever the Reds win, we hear, oh my gosh, see, this team is just as good as we thought they were going to be, and Terry Francona is a genius. And then whenever they lose, we hear, see, this team will never change, and Terry Francona is not as good as we thought, and he's not going to make up for all of the deficiencies that this team has. Both things can't be true. One of those things is true, and they are different people saying those things, but it's like, all right, which one is going to happen? I mean, they're still above 500 right now, as much as we wanted them to win more on this homestand. But at the same time, I'm not ready to say that they're missing expectations right now.
I don't spend a lot of time deeply immersed in the other team's X feeds as far as like social media posting. But I wonder if the other teams in Major League Baseball's social media feeds, their universe, their Twitter, as it were, I wonder if the other teams are near as bipolar as the Cincinnati Reds online space, because it is on any given day, you can be easily convinced that this team is about to win the World Series, or that this team should be relegated to the college baseball circuit. Like you have both extremes all 365 days of the year. And it's both amazing and bewildering all at the same time.
I know from experience talking with our friends over at Locked On Mariners that the Mariners social media space is a very rough place to be on most days. But yeah, I kind of feel like sports fans as a whole, we tend to overreact to every little thing. I mean, that's why you see Matt McClain strike out. Like if he comes up tonight in his first at bat in Atlanta and he strikes out, there's going to be a ton of people that are like, send him down.
Send him down.
And then in his second at bat, he's going to hit a home run. And then everybody's going to be like, sign him to an extension. And there's a middle ground where we can all live, and I just don't know that people understand that.
Carlton, Philly booed Santa, we boo Elly. There you go. And that's where we're wrapping it up today, folks. That is going to be
that bombshell.
How we wrap up this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen. We appreciate you being here. Make sure you are subscribed. You're going to get Jeff and I 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. You're going to get Tim Daniel over on the Postcast. If you haven't been checking out the Postcast, you should be checking out the Postcast. Tim is with you live after each and every game. Every Tuesday at noon, we're dropping the MLB Squad Show, which is the Locked On hosts from around baseball getting together and kind of smack talking each other some, at least when I'm on there. I'm pretty notorious for that. But it's great content of Major League Baseball as a whole, things that we don't normally get to talk about as being Reds focused, but it's a really good show. When you see that in the feed, please check it out. It's a lot of fun to do, and I think it's a really, really good listen. We think you will enjoy it. That's going to do it for us. Now go make your next listen to the Locked On MLB podcast with Sully. Sully is great. He gives you a daily look at the biggest stories from all around Major League Baseball. Until next time, we will be in your feed tomorrow, gathering up the news, the notes, the rumors, and the reports, and we will keep you locked on Reds each and every day.
That's how we end the show. We end the show talking about who we booed. We gotta work on that tomorrow.
And there's a drive to deep left field. And that's
in stream.